I adjusted my tie for the fifth time in front of the mirror, trying to calm the anxiety building in my chest. Tonight was important. My wife's annual office party at the prestigious marketing firm where she'd recently been promoted. She kept reminding me how crucial this evening was for her career. "Are you ready yet?" Her voice carried a hint of irritation from the bedroom. "We can't be late. The executive team will be there, including the CEO." "Almost done," I replied, smoothing down my new suit, the one I'd spent too much money on just to make sure I wouldn't embarrass her. The drive to the venue was filled with her last-minute coaching. "Remember to mention your project management experience if anyone asks, and please try to be more assertive than last time." Each suggestion felt like a small paper cut. I nodded, promising to make her proud. The event space was intimidating, all glass and modern art, with people who exuded confidence. I recognized a few faces from previous functions, but mostly felt out of place. My wife quickly spotted her colleagues and pulled me along, her hand firmly on my elbow. "There's the marketing team," she whispered. "Let me do most of the talking." For the first hour, things went relatively well. I smiled at the right moments, laughed at inside jokes I didn't understand, and kept my wife's wine glass filled. Then her supervisor approached with the CEO, and I could feel her tension escalate. "Your quarterly numbers were exceptional," the CEO said to my wife. "We need more of that killer instinct in the company." She beamed. "Thank you, sir. I believe in pushing boundaries." The conversation shifted to a recent rock climbing retreat the company had organized. Several executives had participated, including my wife. "Your wife was fearless on that cliff face," her supervisor remarked to me. "What about you? Do you share her adventurous spirit?" Before I could answer, my wife laughed. That particular laugh she used when trying to impress someone. "Him? Oh, he gets vertigo standing on a stepladder. I'm definitely the risk-taker in our marriage." A few chuckles rippled through the group, but I felt my face burn. The CEO smiled. "Nothing wrong with being cautious. Different strengths and all that." "It's beyond caution," my wife continued, seemingly oblivious to my discomfort. "Remember, when we had that mouse in the apartment last month? Guess who had to trap it?" She pantomimed, trembling, eliciting more laughter. I took a large sip of my drink, wishing I could disappear. But she wasn't finished. "And when we go camping, he won't sleep without an air mattress and insists on staying at sites with full bathroom facilities." Not exactly the rugged outdoorsman. The CEO's expression changed subtly, his eyes shifting to me with what looked like sympathy. My wife's supervisor cleared his throat, clearly sensing the conversation had veered into uncomfortable territory. "Actually," the supervisor intervened, "I was talking with your husband earlier about his woodworking hobby. Those custom bookshelves. He built sound impressive. I hadn't mentioned any woodworking hobby, I didn't have one, but I recognized his attempt to redirect the conversation and felt a strange moment of connection with this man I barely knew. My wife looked confused. "Woodworking? He doesn't." "Perhaps you could show me some photos sometime," the supervisor continued smoothly, cutting her off. "I've been thinking about commissioning some custom pieces for my office." The conversation mercifully shifted to office renovations, but the damage was done. I excused myself to get some air, walking out to the balcony where the cool night breeze did little to alleviate the humiliation burning inside me. Years of small comments and subtle put-downs suddenly crystallized into a painful pattern I had been ignoring. I wasn't just the butt of tonight's jokes. I was a recurring character flaw in the narrative she'd constructed about our relationship. "Mind if I join you?" I turned to see her supervisor standing in the doorway, 2 tumblers of amber liquid in hand. He offered one to me without waiting for an answer. "Thought you might need something stronger than champagne." I accepted the drink with a nod, grateful for both the alcohol and the lack of pity in his expression. "Thank you." And thanks for the imaginary woodworking hobby. He leaned against the railing beside me, looking out at the skyline. My wife did something similar at a company retreat years ago. Made me feel about 2 inches tall in front of everyone. What did you do? I asked. Nothing that first time, he said, swirling his drink thoughtfully. And the second time. By the third time, I was divorced. We stood in silence for a moment, the party noise muffled behind us. Listen, he said finally. I don't know you well, but I recognize self-respect when I see it. Walking out of a room, that takes more courage than jumping off some corporate team-building rock. I didn't know how to respond, so I just nodded. For what it's worth, he continued, I've been in this business 20 years. The people who last aren't the ones who build themselves up by tearing others down. That strategy always backfires eventually. The balcony door opened, and my wife appeared, her expression a mixture of irritation and forced cheerfulness. There you are. Everyone's wondering where you went. Her eyes darted between me and her supervisor, clearly trying to assess the situation. Just getting some fresh air and having a fascinating conversation, her supervisor replied before I could speak. Your husband was telling me about his interest in behavioral economics. Quite insightful. Another fictional interest, but I appreciated the gesture. My wife looked confused again. We should get back inside, she said to me, her smile not reaching her eyes. The CEO's wife was asking about you. Actually, I said, finding my voice at last, I think I'm going to head home. Her smile vanished. What? You can't leave now. We've only been here 2 hours. I'm not feeling well. It wasn't entirely a lie. My stomach had been churning since her performance inside. Don't be ridiculous, she hissed, stepping closer and lowering her voice. This is important for my career. You can manage a few more hours. Her supervisor cleared his throat. Perhaps I should give you two a moment, he said, but made no move to leave. No need, I replied, finishing my drink and setting the glass on a nearby table. I've ordered a ride. It should be here any minute. I hadn't, but I would as soon as I got downstairs. She stared at me, her expression shifting between disbelief and frustration. The one time I need you to be supportive. You're running away because your feelings got hurt. Something shifted inside me then. A quiet certainty replacing the confusion and hurt. I straightened my shoulders. I've supported you through 3 promotions, 2 career changes, and countless late nights. But tonight, you didn't ask for my support. You used me as a prop. Her face flushed. You're overreacting. It was just harmless joking. Was it? I asked quietly. Her gaze faltered, and in that moment, I knew. Something had changed, and I wasn't going back. When she saw me sitting with her supervisor, her expression cycled rapidly through shock, confusion, and dawning comprehension. Our eyes locked across the room, and for a moment, everything else faded away. In her face, I saw the same realization that had struck me at the party. Nothing would ever be the same again. The ride home that night was silent, tension filling the car like a physical presence. My wife gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white. I gazed out the window, watching the city lights blur past, mentally preparing for the inevitable confrontation. As soon as our apartment door closed behind us, she whirled to face me. Were you ever going to tell me? Or was I supposed to find out by accident that you've been working with my supervisor behind my back? I was consulting on a project. It's not behind your back. Don't play semantics with me, she snapped. You've been meeting with him, my direct superior, and never thought to mention it? After that disaster at the party, do you have any idea how this makes me look? There it was again. Her immediate concern for appearances rather than substance. How it makes you look, I repeated slowly. Not how it might affect my life or career. Not whether it's been positive for me, just how it reflects on you? She faltered momentarily before recovering. That's not fair. You know how important my position is at the firm. You deliberately kept this from me. Yes, I admitted. I did. Because for once, I wanted something that was just mine. Something you couldn't dismiss or diminish. What are you talking about? When have I ever dismissed your interests? I laughed, a hollow sound that surprised even me. Every day, for years. So consistently that I stopped noticing until recently. My ideas were impractical, my hobbies childish, my career ambitions unrealistic. But when your supervisor, a successful professional, saw value in those same ideas, suddenly they had merit. She sank onto the sofa, defensive anger giving way to confusion. Is this all because of what I said at the party? I apologized for that. The party was a symptom, not the cause, I said, remaining standing. It just made me see clearly what I'd been ignoring. We built a relationship where your dreams were the priority and mine were the sacrifice. I accepted that arrangement for so long that I almost forgot I had dreams of my own. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back, needing physical distance, to maintain emotional clarity. What exactly are you doing with this project? She asked, her voice smaller now. Consulting on architectural elements of a downtown development. They've asked me to consider a formal arrangement for future projects. Her eyes widened. You're not qualified. You never finished your degree. Apparently, talent and insight matter more than credentials to some people. The words came out sharper than intended, but I didn't soften them with an apology. And my supervisor arranged all this? Why would he do that? I shrugged. Maybe he recognized something in me. Maybe he just wanted to help. Or maybe he saw how I was treated and decided I deserved better. She flinched as if I'd struck her. So this is about punishing me? Embarrassing me professionally? Revenge? Not everything is about you, I said quietly. This is about me rebuilding something I lost. It has nothing to do with revenge. Her anger resurfaced. Familiar territory in unfamiliar circumstances. You've been lying to me for weeks while meeting with my boss. How am I supposed to interpret that? I didn't lie. I just didn't volunteer information you never asked. 4. When did you last ask about my day, my interests, my ambitions? Not what you needed from me or how I could support you, just who I am and what I want. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, realization dawning in her eyes. I'm going to bed, I said, suddenly exhausted by the conversation. We can talk more tomorrow if you want. As I turned to leave, she called after me, vulnerability replacing anger in her voice. Are we okay? I paused at the threshold of our bedroom, considering the question with the honesty it deserved. I don't know. But I do know I can't go back to who I was before. The next week brought a strange new reality. My wife made almost desperate attempts to show interest in my work, asking detailed questions about the project and offering enthusiastic support. But beneath her attentiveness, I sensed fear, not of losing me, but of losing control of the narrative we had lived by for so long. Meanwhile, my involvement with the development project deepened. One afternoon, as I stood examining foundation work with the project manager, my phone rang with my wife's supervisor's number. We need to talk, he said without preamble. My office, tomorrow morning. His tone sent alarm bells ringing. Is there a problem with the project? Not with the project. Just be there at 9. He hung up before I could press for details. That evening,